All right. Well, welcome to our second Progressive Democrats of LaPorte County Democratic Candidate Forum. Oh, great. Oh, no, that's not. No, I thought that was Mark. We're still waiting on one candidate representative, but we're getting there. So I want to turn it over to Dr. Cora. He is our LaPorte County Democratic Party Chair to say a few words of introduction before we speak with the candidates.
Thank you. Thank you, Deb. Thanks for having me, and thanks for organizing this wonderful event. That way, candidates have an opportunity to express themselves and their ideas. Every election is important, but this one is really, really, really important for many, many reasons, because never in our history have we had an insurrection. Never in our history have we had this big lie that is a threat to democracy and democratic norms moving forwards. Never in our history have all these election deniers been running for office. And so we have a lot at stake in this election. And that's the reason why it is important for all of us to get our message out, and also to showcase our wonderful candidates, the mayor of Hammond, and the next senator, Tom McDermott, our current congressman from the 1st district, Frank Mrvan, and the next congressman from the 2nd district, Paul Steury. So I want to welcome all of you. All of you have given of yourselves, and I know when you put your name on the ballot, when you go around the state, when you go around different districts and campaigning, it's a lot of effort that you put into it. We are all very grateful to you for doing that, and we'll do everything possible between now and election day to make sure that we are successful. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Deb. And again, I want to thank the Progressive Democratic Club for organizing this event.
Great. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. We're each candidate, and we do have Mark Lopez here, who is representing U.S. Congressman Frank Mrvan. He is in session right now, and so we'll forgive him for doing the thing that we sent him to do. And Mark is very well known around here and has great things to say. He knows everything, so he'll be a terrific representative. So I want to give each of the candidates a minute to just do an introductory statement, maybe 3 minutes each, and we'll go alphabetical. So Tom McDermott, you'll be going first. And if you just introduce yourself, gives you a little background, and and tell us why you're running. And I'm
Thanks,
gonna
Deb.
put you up there. There we go.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. I want to say thank you to the LaPorte County Democrats for inviting me to this, to Deb, to Dr. Cora, and everybody that worked on putting this event together. I'm in a conference room right now, so I hope I have a good connection. I'm multitasking. I'm on the road actually in St. Joseph County, so it's good to see everybody. I'm Tom McDermott. I'm the mayor of Hammond, but I'm your Democratic nominee for the United States Senate. I've been working real hard for 13 months now, running against Todd Young. And in the 13 months that I've been running, we've done over 60,000 miles across the state of Indiana. We've raised over $1 million. We have thousands of people contributing to my campaign, hundreds of people donating time to my campaign, and I really feel momentum. For the first time in a long time, I think that we have a real good chance to win up and down the ballot on November 8th. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us good Democrats to make sure that we have lines at the polls. I think that that's the most important thing we could all do. Obviously, people that have the financial capability to donate to their Democratic candidates, that's important. I'm not going to say it's not. It's very important. But I think for those that aren't financially able, and for us in the party apparatus, getting people to the polls, I think 70% of all new votes are going to be our votes. And so it's incumbent upon us to get people registered before the deadline in early October. It's incumbent upon us to make sure that people show up to vote and we have lines at the polls. But I've been working real hard. I think we have a great opportunity, and it's unfortunate that the opportunity is because of a right that was taken away from half of our population. I saw a lot of momentum the day the Dobbs opinion leaked. We saw a lot more momentum when Roe versus Wade was overturned by the Supreme Court. And then the Indiana legislature completed, what Todd Young told us in 2016 he was going to do. Todd Young told us in 2016 that he was pro-life with no exceptions. And since he's been in the United States Senate, he's confirmed 3 justices that overturned Roe versus Wade. So here we are. Indiana follows suit after Roe versus Wade's overturned and makes abortion illegal, except in almost every case in the state of Indiana. And it just went into effect just a couple of days ago. I think that women aren't going to sit back while their civil liberties are being taken away. I don't think it's fair that women in Indiana are treated differently than women in other states. I don't think it's right that the United States Supreme Court ignored precedent. And I promise, once elected, I know why I was elected. I was elected because women voted for me over Todd Young. And when I become your US Senator, I promise to do everything I can to reverse the damage that was done to Roe versus Wade and to restore women's civil liberties in every state, in the United States of America, not just in the blue states. So anyway, I think things are going great. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to LaPorte County Democrats. I'm multitasking tonight and speaking to some Democrats from St. Joseph County as well. So I'm doing good as a candidate, but I'm available to answer any questions if you guys have them when it's appropriate. So thank you, Deb.
Great. All right. So yes, so we're going to let everyone introduce, and then we'll have about 40 minutes for questions. I have some questions, and we're hopeful that all of our Zoom participants will put some good questions into the Zoom box as well. Okay, now I've got to find you. Hang on. Where'd you go, Mark? Oh, there you are. All right. Okay. So, Mark, as representative for U.S. Congressman Frank Mrvan, give us a little background about Frank and tell us, how he's doing and, what his platform is.
Deb, I just want to thank the LaPorte County Democrats. I want to thank you because your activism and your support, it helps strengthen our democracy. You have been a staunch advocate for issues of great importance for the people of LaPorte County and our region and our state and nation for a number of years, and want to immediately make sure I acknowledge that and recognize it. Congressman Frank Mrvan, a little under 2 years ago, secured the nomination to be our representative in Indiana's 1st Congressional District. And upon securing that position, prior to being sworn in, he worked aggressively to secure the co-chairman of the Congressional Steel Caucus, because he understood the value and the importance of steel to Indiana's 1st Congressional District. And he wanted to be an advocate and a voice for that industry and that workforce on day one. Shortly after securing the nomination, being sworn in, Congressman Frank Mrvan was very proud to advocate and support the American Rescue Plan. The American Rescue Plan saved lives and livelihoods. In Indiana's 1st District alone, with the National Vaccination Plan, you had a situation where over 63,000 fellow Americans were inoculated from COVID. And what that did was help accelerate the reopening of our economy. It also had provisions to help Franklin Street in Michigan City, providing small businesses that lifeline to maintain their existence, and workers with programs like the child tax credit to maintain their households. It also created an opportunity for schools to reopen safely. We've toured a number of schools that utilize funding to improve their ventilation system, to provide personal protective equipment, so that the support staff, the educators, the administrators, and the students could learn in a safe manner. And what he has done shortly thereafter was that infrastructure bill. We had heard for 4 years the infrastructure week. Well, Congressman Frank Mrvan and the Democratic Party was very successful in finally passing that legislation, which is the largest investment in roads, bridges, ports, airports, waterways, and broadband internet. I would point out in particular in LaPorte County, you now see funding made available that allows for the dredging of Michigan City Harbor and Trail Creek Waterway, which is a tremendous benefit for that community. It also provided money to ensure that the double track project would be funded and would be realized, and monies for the Michigan City Airport, Michigan City Schools, and the city of Michigan City to reopen safely and to provide valuable public service. He wasn't slowing down at that point. He was a staunch advocate because when he assumed the position as member of Congress, his life experiences tended as a trustee revolve around those that have been marginalized, those that through no fault of their own found themselves economically displaced, those that hit a bump in the road or dealt with a fire or flood or whatever event, and he wanted to uplift them. And so he was very proud to get on the Committee of Education and Labor and Veterans Affairs, because as trustee, he created a Veterans Roundtable so he could learn their lessons. And he was very proud to be a leader of the PACT Act on the Veterans Committee. We learned our past mistakes with the Vietnam era veterans as it related to Agent Orange. And so now, if you served overseas and you had the experience of a toxic burn pit, you now have a presumption of cause because of your service being in that area for up to 30 different diseases and maladies. And that is helpful to that veteran. So you start with the rescue plan, the infrastructure plan, the PACT Act, then you saw the disruption to our economy with the pandemic. And he worked hard because for the CHIPS and science legislation. That bill, we saw firsthand in the first district that when you don't have semiconductors, it is very destructive to our steel industry. And so if you don't have the semiconductor to make the automotive, you don't need to buy steel. If you don't have the semiconductor for your washing machine, for your dishwasher, you don't need to buy steel. So Congressman Mrvan worked very aggressively to help push that across the finish line. And most recently, it was the Inflation Reduction Act. For the first time since the creation of the prescription drug plan for Medicare patients, clients, you now have a situation where seniors don't have to pick and choose between missing a meal or missing a prescription. They have a requirement that Big Pharma has to at least sit down and sharpen their pencil and negotiate, just like they do for the Veterans Administration, just like they do for every private corporation, and requires them to negotiate. I'm not suggesting it's going to automatically lower the price. I am suggesting it gives us a fighting chance, and it caps the out-of-pocket expense at $2,000. So in Frank Mrvan's very short time in Congress, what he has done has been to work as hard as the individuals who sent him there. He wakes up every morning focused on creating an economy that works for everyone. And as the Democratic nominee, Mayor Tom McDermott, a friend, as he suggested, there was, and I would not want to ignore the fact, the Dobbs decision, where for the first time in our nation's history, the Supreme Court removed what was inferred as a constitutional right, that women have autonomy and the freedom to make healthcare decisions for their person. And since you saw the repeal of Roe v. Wade, you have seen draconian laws passed across this nation. You have seen 10-year-old rape survivors have to flee one state to go to another state to exercise that freedom. You have seen a situation where women have been told that I don't care if it's rape, incest, or your life, you must do something. Congressman Frank Mrvan is a staunch advocate to ensure that women return that freedom and have that opportunity to make those decisions absent the involvement of a politician. But in closing, simply want to thank the LaPorte County Democrats and the progressive movement for the enthusiasm and the intensity that they're bringing to this election. The only way the Democratic nominee, Tom McDermott, respectful of both, or Congressman Mrvan loses, is if people think we can't and if they don't go to the polls. So today, what you're doing is you're creating a forum and you're creating an audience for people to understand that they can pick their legislators and they can create the country that they want to live in, but it requires participation. And by the fact that you hosted it means you're creating the opportunity. Those that are participating are creating an avenue. And just please, would not ask you to vote on November 8th. I do not. Vote 30 days prior. And over that 30-day window, just get 2 people to come to the polls to support candidates who support your issues. Then we will create a country and a nation that is progressive, that's thinking about the future, that's thinking about what type of society they want to leave those that follow us. But you said 1 to 2 minutes, so I want to close there, and I'll be happy to take any questions that you may have. But again, Congressman Mrvan, simply put, wants to create an economy that works for everybody, wants to create an equitable society for everybody, and wants to work as hard as every individual does when they wake up in Northwest Indiana, LaPorte, LaPorte County. He has that charge in Washington, D.C., and when he's home.
All right. All right, great. Thank you so much, Mark. And don't go away because we do have good questions for you. So, okay, so Paul, tell us a little bit about yourself. Just it's interesting, Mrvan is in a district that's highly urbanized, industrial, and you're in the very next district, which is really quite rural. And so, so tell us about yourself. I know you grew up on a pig farm, which I think is interesting, but tell us more about you and why you're running.
Well, thank you, Deb, and thank you, progressives. And also, I was in LaPorte on Sunday for the sausage roast or whatever that was that we had. It was great to meet everybody. And I'm not sure how many of you know which district you're in now because of the way they've gerrymandered the lines around. Some of you might be in District 2, some of you might be in District 1, but I hope you know by November 8th, if not before. Yes, I grew up in an 80-acre pig farm, and it was one of those old-fashioned farms. It was we had 200 piglets, 12 sows, 2 boars. We had wheat, alfalfa, corn, tomatoes. That actually, back when I was a kid, we actually had migrant workers come in and pick our tomatoes for us. And then I moved to a camp when I was 6 because my dad said in 1970 chemicals are coming, and he didn't want to get into big machinery and having to spray and all that stuff. And so he was a caretaker at Camp Mac, a 100-acre Church of Brethren camp. Mom was a head cook and I was the head brat. And so I was a professional tree climber. And then we moved to the big city of Goshen, Indiana. And I went to Bethany Christian High School, graduated, and then went to Goshen College for 2 years, and I did horrible because I wasn't ready. And so then I went off and traveled the world, found out what direction I wanted to go, came back and aced my finals, and I became a sociologist, or I got my undergraduate in sociology, the study of life, and worked with people with disabilities for 10 years, which was beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. Then I was living in LA and actually working with men with autism. And I had to drive from where I was living up in the mountains down into Northridge where the earthquake happened. And I'd go from blue skies to gray to brown smog. And I said, what can I do to actually make a difference in life? And I eventually figured out environmental education. And so I got my master's in environmental education from IU Bloomington. Then I went to become an education director at the Smoky Mountains Institute at Tremont. It was a residential environmental education center. Yes, I got to take inner city Memphis kids on backpacking hikes, which was fantastic. But then I was offered a job at Mary Lee Environmental Learning Center of Goshen College, where I was a professor for 15 years, taught pre-service teachers. And then I also taught graduate level courses. One was Principles of Environmental Education and History and Issues of Environmental Education. Then I got tired of driving all the way there because it was a 45-minute one-way drive. So I became a 7th grade science teacher. And then the past 2 years, I've been actually a high school environmental science teacher for at-risk youth in Elkhart, Indiana. But my stump speech is I'm an educator for educators. I've been in education for 30 years. And actually, because of that, I've actually been endorsed by NEA as well as ISTA and the American Federation of Teachers, which I'm excited. I'm a worker for workers. And so I actually worked at the aluminum trailer company for a couple years. Also worked at the Independent Protection Company, which was a lightning rod factory here in Goshen. I've also done roofing, construction, social service, all sorts of things. And because of that, AFL-CIO has endorsed me, as well as Local 150, the Operators Union. And I'm actually working with Teamsters and others. And then I'd really like to have, I'm an environmental educator for the environment. And because I taught environmental education, I like to consider myself an expert in issue investigation. And I know a lot about all the issues that surround us here. And I'd really like to emphasize lifting up District 2, because may she rest in peace, Jackie was horrible with the environment. And League of Conservation Voters gave her a 4 out of 100. And so that's pretty pitiful. And League of Conservation Voters just basically measured you on your environmental vote. But Sierra Club just endorsed me, national. And so I'm excited about that. And then last but not least, I'd really like to work at Healthcare for All. And I've been working with some doctors in Granger, Indiana, on a Medicare system, but not just for 60-year-old and above, but for everyone. And so I told a WSBT Channel 22 in South Bend, I said, I'm an educator. I'm a social servant. I'm not a politician. My job is not to be a politician who plays games. My job is to do research and then also represent District 2. And that's my main goal. Do I still have time, Deb, to just say a couple more things?
Okay, more things.
I'd like to co-sponsor several bills that have been in Congress for years, but I'd really like to be that person that helps set a fire and make it happen. I'd like to help out with the PRO Act, which is protecting the right to organize. And because of the unions and their support of me, I really want to help out people not getting in trouble just for trying to organize. I'd like to help out with the No Child Left Inside Act, which is an environmental education bill that would give monies to environmental education centers, which is exactly what I desire, and it's perfect for our future. I'd like to help out with the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, which actually makes fossil fuel industries pay for their pollutants, which they're not doing right now. And then I'd like to actually be a bipartisan person and help out Mike Braun with his Growing Climate Solutions, which actually gives monies towards carbon sequestration. So farmers and foresters will be able to gain money just from plants doing their job, taking in CO2. And then last but not least, I'm a huge fan of Dennis Kucinich from Cleveland, and I'd like to promote his bill that he kept pushing for 30 years, the Department of Peace Act, which just basically emphasizes peace and solutions instead of defense and war.
Wonderful.
And then
Wonderful.
last but not least, I'd like to codify Roe, because I know I'm married to a wife. I have a beautiful wife, and I treat her as an equal, and I treat all my friends as equals. What's happening now is we're trying to push down and repress women, and I truly believe we need to treat everyone the same.
All right, terrific. Okay, so I want to get let's see, now we're gonna find Tom again. Oh, for goodness sake, where are you, Tom?
I'm here.
There you are. Okay,
Yeah.
so I want to get you up, and I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna pin you up, and we're gonna pin you up too. Okay, good. So Tom, I want to ask you first. We know there's been some great polls lately that are really indicating that you are very close in this race. Despite the money difference, I know that's been, a problem because, Republicans are just throwing money all over the place to keep their guys in. But I want you to tell us, what does it mean if we can flip this district and we can get another Democrat in the U.S. Senate? We've heard about these other congressional bills that have been passed in the House, but, of course, go to die in the Senate. And so, so tell us what it means if we can flip this district and get another Democratic senator in the Senate.
I think it means a lot for Hoosier Democrats. When I first started campaigning a year ago, I felt like the manager of the Chicago Cubs when I talked to fellow Democrats, because we've become so dispirited over the years and the losses that we've accumulated. And I like to remind people, I got elected Hammond's mayor in 2004. When I took over in 2004, we had a Democratic senator, we had a Democratic congressman, multiple Democratic congressmen. We had Democratic Speaker of the House, Democratic governor. We won regularly in Southern Indiana. And it's not a permanent thing that happened to us. A lot of bad luck, and I think that we're finally turning the corner. And because I chose to run against Todd Young, who I think is probably one of the tougher candidates in the Republican Party statewide, I think that beating Todd Young will do wonders for our party. I'm not just talking about in 2022. I'm talking 2 years from now when there's another Senate seat that's up for grabs, when the governor spot is up for grabs, and we have a whole new slate of representatives and senators that will be running. I think it's huge because a lot of the problems that we experience in particular happens because of what's going on in the General Assembly. So anyway, I think it would be huge. And I know Mark Lopez just spoke a few minutes ago. I do want to reiterate how important Congressman Mrvan and Congressman Carson were to the city of Hammond and me as Hammond's mayor. We received $40 million of American Rescue Plan money, and we put, $50 million of American Rescue Plan money, and we put every penny of that ARP money into the streets of Hammond on projects where we hired people, hired local firms, and we're doing infrastructure work with it. We also had money out of that for our schools. I just think it's imperative that we get Congressman Mrvan reelected, and we have a twofold hit for that. Obviously, Northwest Indiana has a region native running for U.S. Senate. I think getting Congressman Mrvan elected helps me, and me helping get Congressman Mrvan elected helps both of us. So I do want to say thank you again.
Well, are there particular bills though that are sitting, waiting to be reviewed in the Senate that you would particularly want to pick up and and push through the Senate? If we
The
can
most
get a couple more.
most important thing I'd be looking at is Roe versus Wade. That's the most important thing, and that's the reason I got elected. And I'm not going to lose sight of that. But dude, there's so many good bills that go to the U.S. Senate that die in regards to voting rights, another good one, and same-sex marriage, another good one. And quite frankly, the U.S. Senate was set to take a vote on affirming whether or not same-sex marriage should be allowed, which is ridiculous that they're even talking about it. And Chuck Schumer decided not to put the senators on record until after the midterms, which I don't appreciate because my opponent, Todd Young, is on the record against same-sex marriage. And I think it's important to put them on the record, but that's not happening. It's part of the problem in the Senate is the filibuster. And that's another thing that I'm against as well, is the filibuster allows these senators to not have to go on the record. And quite frankly, the U.S. Senate and the 6-year terms were set up specifically so great debate would take place and important votes would be made. And because of the filibuster, that's just not happening. So it's not just 1 or 2 bills that go to the Senate to die. It's a lot of good bills, including climate change bills and things of that nature. So.
Right. All right. Well, great. Thanks. Okay. So Mark, so you talked about a lot of bills that Congressman Mrvan was able to get through. Tell us about the ones that, that have passed the House that are sitting, dormant in the Senate that, that you'd like to see move on.
Deb, that's a wonderful question. The line I like to use is Senate's where good bills go to die. But the reality is, off the top of my head, you had a situation with the PRO Act. The candidate, Paul, from the 2nd District, suggested that, the right to organize. You think about a workers' rights bill that, the fact that if you do not possess the right to organize, you can't collectively bargain, you can't negotiate for fair pay, you can't negotiate for safe work environments, and you can't negotiate for access to secure retirement and healthcare. You think about the issue that the Mayor Tom McDermott suggested about acknowledgement and recognition of same-sex marriage. You think about Violence Against Women's Act. You think about these bills that should not be partisan. It's just about giving ordinary citizens equal footing with the powerful. Our democracy requires participation, and we need to fully participate to ensure that we hold elected officials accountable so that their voice is heard. And you speak about voice, your voice is your vote. And so you think about the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. You have in this nation today no less than 5 seats for Congress, House of Representatives, that have been affirmatively decided as though they're unconstitutional. But the Supreme Court's saying, that's fine, run your election this year, you need to have new boundaries next year. Well, that's because when you had to repeal the Shelby decision at the Supreme Court, they no longer had to get pre-clearance. So when you have a reduction in your voice, in your access to the ballot, you weaken this nation. When you have a reduction in the voice of workers, you weaken this nation. The positions that we hold, when you have a reduction of people who want social equity and economic prosperity, you weaken this nation. These are not liberal ideologies that are designed to, weaken us. They're designed to strengthen us. Our strength is in our diversity, in ideas, in our parity in terms of giving. And I'm often reminded of the Abraham Lincoln quote, labor before capital, because absent labor, there's no capital. Labor needs a voice at the table. All of our demographics need a voice at the ballot box. So off the top of my head, Deb, I would simply say you have to give workers a voice. You have to give minorities a voice because that's our strength. So PRO Act, the Voting Rights Act, and social equity. Those are very important pieces of legislation. And then you think about the Violence Against Women Act, gender, workers, voting, those are critical. And currently under the configuration, and I've read the Constitution many times in my life, I don't remember reading that 60 was required. So at the end of the day, I'm not here to give a political lecture or discourse, but the fact of the matter is good bills go to die in that institution. And I appreciate the deliberative process they have, but they have demonstrated by affirming a Supreme Court justice 7 days before an election and holding one out for 10 months, 10 months, that they are capable of being political.
Well,
So
I think what you're saying is I'm really making the point about how important this election is, because, starting with the Shelby case in 2013, we've seen the real kind of destruction of what we thought of as fundamental constitutional rights. And, just the gutting of the Voting Rights Act, and, the ability for states to just, take away, suppress votes. And that's what makes the legislature really just much more critical. To have fair-minded people in the legislature who will be looking out for voters and for marginalized communities.
You look at the state of Alabama, 25% of their population happens to be African-American. They carved up districts to only allow them one member out of their delegation to represent a district with that demographic. That's wrong. You are removing their right to elect people who represent them. So, that can all be changed legislatively, as with the,
right.
The argument about the states' rights issue on the issue of Roe v. Wade. They're trying to nuance it, but the reality is Senator Lindsey Graham has proposed a ban. There is a bill in the House of Representatives that has 166 co-sponsors that has no exceptions. None.
So that's a ban on abortion with no exceptions.
In the House, 166 members are in favor. I think it's called PAIN. It's by Mooney from West Virginia. So this whole states' rights argument is a colander just seeping water through it, because the argument, well, you can live in a state that allows it. Okay, well, now there's a federal ban.
Well, also not if there's not a federal guarantee to a right to an abortion.
Yep.
So, and that's fine. That's fine with me. So, my point is just that really makes this election much more critical in light of the Supreme Court makeup that we're looking at these days. So, okay, so I want to move to Paul. And Paul, I want to ask you, there's been much discussion about the cost of living increase. And we're seeing lots of Republican ads attacking Democrats because there has been increase in cost of living increase. Well, first, my first question is the Inflation Reduction Act. Is that a misnomer, or, explain to me how that act reduces inflation?
Well, the main goal is to actually tax all the people and not just some of them. And so then that will increase basically the whole budget will increase immensely because of taxing those who are going through loopholes so they don't have to be taxed, and industry that's not paying anything at all. So that's going to increase it incredibly. And so it's a long-term decision or solution instead of a short-term solution. And so that's one thing you have to really think about, is this will benefit us greatly, but not immediately. And there will be no taxes increased on the majority of the people. It's primarily those.
What do you say to, people who are saying, I can't vote for Biden because inflation, prices are too high?
And I actually do have.
I'm sorry, I can't vote for a Democrat is what I mean to say, I guess.
Right. Well, I have discussions with them, and I just listen to the main thing that I'm learning in my district is people just want to be listened to. And so I listen a lot without talking, and I make sure to know that they're being heard. And then I come back to them after I have time to think that it's not Biden's fault. It's more of a global thing, especially with inflation. And I'd say a lot of it's, if we want to put a finger to anybody, that's probably Putin that's causing a lot of this majority of causation. And so, and why? Well, he's power hungry for one, but he wants to bring back the USSR. And because of that, oil prices have gone off the roof. And because of that, inflation has increased, because oil makes this world go round, which is a bummer since I'm an environmental educator. And that's why I really want to work at, that's really one of the main reasons why I love the Inflation Reduction Act, because of its push on electric vehicles and the infrastructure that goes around with the electric vehicles, because that'll benefit future generations.
Well, and reduce our reliance on oil.
Correct.
So that's, yes, and that is a great thing about that act. Okay, Tom. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead,
just
Paul.
one last thing I want to make sure everybody knows, but I think you probably already do. NIPSCO said that they want to be coal-free by 2028. Actually, last month I heard coal-free by 23. So next year. Yep.
Wow, that would be delightful. That would be
Wouldn't it?
delightful. Okay, Tom, same question. What are you saying to people who are saying, you Democrats are causing inflation, it's Joe Biden's fault?
The fact is, Todd Young does say that. He wants people to think it's as simple as Joe Biden took office and raised the price of gas. What Todd Young doesn't want people to know is he's been in Washington, D.C. for 12 years, which is 10 years longer than Joe Biden has. And what Todd Young's voting record did was contribute to the inflation problems we're dealing with today. Todd Young voted for $16 trillion of new spending. We have in our total nation's debt, about 50% of our nation's debt, Todd Young voted yes on. And that's inflationary. Government spending is the biggest inflationary pressure out there. And Todd Young contributed to half of our nation's debt. And he's allegedly this conservative, the small government conservative, and he voted for half the debt we have. And we're paying the price for all that government spending right now. The government spending through the Great Recession, the government spending that got us through the pandemic, the government spending that Todd Young voted for, $16 trillion. And now we're dealing with inflation. And Todd Young wants to point to me, the mayor of Hammond, like I'm part of the problem. People aren't buying it. I'm not going to let them buy it. I just tell the truth, and people are listening, and they're sick of BS from politicians like Todd Young.
Excellent. Okay, Mark. You rattled off a lot of bills that were passed, bipartisan bills, infrastructure, ARPA, CARES Act, ESSER 2, ESSER 3, and then of course the Inflation Reduction Act. So tell me, where am I going to see this money? How am I going to see this money here in Northwest Indiana? I know, and I know that a lot of it's been marketed as state money, as if it's coming from the state of Indiana, when we know it's actually coming from the federal government.
Deb, I would just like to revisit, if I can go a step back, as it relates to inflation. And I will address your second part quick. But the reality is, for the first time in our nation's history, since the creation of the prescription drug program, Congress has taken on Big Pharma. And they have said, we have 44 million customers. We're not suggesting that in and of itself will reduce the price, but we're going to ask you to negotiate with us, just like GE does, and just like AT&T does, and the Veterans Administration. At least negotiate. With the Inflation Reduction Act, and this is embarrassing. I am embarrassed I have to admit this. That bill paid for itself. And the main reason why it paid for itself was, if you are a corporation and you go to your boardroom and you say the following: we made $2 billion in profit, and you start handing out bonuses to your executives, and then you go to the government and say, man, we looked and looked and looked, we don't owe you anything. Now, mind you, that corporation's profit was derived, yes, through ingenuity, innovation, and good workforce, no doubt. But they utilized our roads, our ports, our airports, our waterways, our broadband. They utilize our national security to protect the flow of their commerce globally. And they don't want to participate. They don't want to contribute. So, Deb, I would simply suggest, when you make Big Pharma and big corporations and you tell them you got to pay at least 15%, and why I'm offended by that is nobody on this call paid 15% when they worked. But big corporations, with their corporate welfare and their accounting and their tax code that benefits them, they have no problem doing that. So when you say 15% minimum tax on corporations' profits, and you say Big Pharma, you got to come to the table, they're going to spend countless sums of money to silence your voice. So the Inflation Reduction Act is going to have a positive impact on inflation, because it's going to require people to participate that we're not, and going to require those that are exorbitantly profiting to at least sit across from us. Now, you asked, when are you going to see these monies? Well, the PACT Act, it's signed into law. If you served in the Middle East theater since 2001, and you have any one of 30 blood disorders or cancers, you're immediately going to get the presumption that it was acquired through your service to this nation. That's immediate. As it relates to the Infrastructure Investment Act, I would tell you, you're seeing it now. I was standing out at Washington Park with U.S. Army Corps of Engineers announcing that $7 million of that funding in that bill is going to dredge Trail Creek and make improvements at Michigan City Harbor. Well, why is that important? Well, one, public safety. Coast Guard couldn't get into and out of because it's shoaled in. 440 slips, of which 50% are people not from LaPorte County. That means that We're going to help improve those that want to be invited and attract to Michigan City. It also allows the charter boat fishermen to go into and out of that corridor. It's going to stimulate an economy. Michigan City, you can't drive in Michigan City without seeing red or orange cones and bars because of the double track project. You have seen, if not tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars worth of investment, and we're not even done yet. It's not even functioning yet, but you see that private sector investment being attracted to Michigan City, going vertical, increasing the tax base. And if you increase the tax base vertical, you can lower the tax rate for the homeowners. So in the short term, I would tell you that you're seeing it now. You're seeing it with the Michigan City Trail Harbor project. You're seeing it with the double track project. You're seeing it with the the Marquette Trail project, which is a biking pedestrian path that goes from Michigan City, goes from the state of Michigan through Chicago, and that receives $16 million. But it's not, I want to caution you, it's not the dollar value that is important. It's not. It's the impact in the community to improve the quality of place. And it's also the attraction of private sector commercial development to our communities. I had the pleasure of touring at the 61st and newest national park, Indiana Dunes National Park, with Representative Neguse and Congressman Mrvan. And they received $16 million to restore structures. There was a tremendous backlog at our national parks. So you're seeing it today. But I just don't want to leave anyone with the impression that it's about the dollars. It is not a monetary discussion. It's about a quality of place. It's about investing in yourself to attract that private sector development. And it's about our responsibility, those of us who serve for those that do, to make sure we're leaving the world a little bit better for the next generation. Regrettably, a lot of times people, point fingers and lay blame and, have arguments. But the reality is, roll your shirt sleeves up, work real hard. We're asset rich in Indiana's first district, 44 miles of Lake Michigan shoreline, 45 miles of passenger rail, the Gary Airport, the Grand Cal River, the Little Cal River, the Kankakee River. We have any number of assets. It's incumbent upon you to require your local elected officials to deliver for your district. You're hearing often now about rampant inflation, out of control government spending. And I remind people, I say, when they say out of control government spending, they're talking about that double track project. They're talking about that dredging project on Trail Creek. They're talking about that money for the Michigan City School Corporation to reopen safely. They're talking about a vaccination plan that saved lives. Don't be fooled. When they talk about rampant inflation, they're not talking about the fact we're going to make Big Pharma negotiate. They're not talking about we're going to make a minimum tax of 15%. The people paying for those ads are the very same corporations that don't want to pay their fair share. They'd rather the waitress at the diner on Franklin Avenue pay their 30% and pay their Social Security tax till December 31st before they pay a penny. I want to be very clear here. When you make bold actions and you do big things, you make powerful enemies. Frank Mrvan, from day one, because of his life experiences as a trustee and seeing firsthand when the economy doesn't work for everybody, when you find yourself economically displaced and you do not want to be sitting across your trustee, that was not your life's plan. Frank Mrvan's life experiences was, how can I transition from where you're at to self-sufficiency? All he has done from that to this job as congressman is expound on that, from education and labor, whether it's the PRO Act, Workforce Innovation Act, whatever it is, his number one focus has been, how can I ensure that I'm representing those who may not have a voice, that may feel powerless, how can I get them on equal footing to give them the opportunity for success? And so, I kind of rambled a little bit, but you're seeing the outcome today, and Frank is not remotely slowing down. He is continually every day charging us as staff, what are we doing to help the homeowners, those that are on the margins, those that are disenfranchised, those that may not have a voice because they're struggling. What are we doing? Because that was his life experience. He never asked what party you're a part, even if you vote, doesn't matter. What are we doing to help people? And so that's my long answer short, to the best of my ability.
Great. I know that's hard. Okay, so Paul, last question. We're running out of time, but last question, Paul. I just saw that La Crosse has also acquired some of this great infrastructure funding from the federal government through the Indiana State Revolving Loan Fund, which will be forgiven because it is a community that is not, high income. And so they're just ecstatic. They're going to be fixing their water treatment plant, which is, huge. I mean, huge for small communities all over the country who will not be able to, never could afford this on their own. But I want to ask you, what are the other parts of the infrastructure? Your interest in environmental advancement, just encouraging, reduction of reliance on fossil fuels and reduction of CO2 emissions. How do you see infrastructure money impacting that?
The CO2 reduction?
All of those. So, solar installation, sequestration programming, all of those, how else can infrastructure money help those kinds of issues?
Well, I know one thing that they're really working on is making sure that there's charging stations as often as possible on interstates primarily initially, but then it'll expand from there. And they're really doing a lot of big pushes on solar installation. And I've gone to visit Stark County and Pulaski County to the Mammoth Solar, which is a fantastic installation that's going on. There'll be 1.2 gigawatts of energy, enough for 275,000 homes, which is amazing. And the farmers and the county are very excited about it because it brings in income. And that's the one thing as the representative for District 2 is we're a manufacturing area besides agricultural, because we're the RV company of RV capital of the world. So what if I would offer up, and I'd have to work with people about this, but offer up green incentives for industry to really, have funding targeting sustainable ideas, and especially in our area, because we're in town, we know how to make things. And so let's go ahead and start making those solar panels instead of buying them from China all the time. We have great minds here. And that's one thing I want to promote is I'm a representative. I might be good at issue investigation, but I'm not great in a lot of different arenas. So I'll be reaching out to Dr. Cora whenever I need any help with Medicare. I'll be reaching out to my farmer friend, Keith Miller, who I just met with yesterday, who is all excited about talking about carbon in the soil and how beneficial it is to be in there instead of up in the air. I'll be reaching out to him to help out with ideas for the farm bill. I'm someone who loves to network. I'm a gregarious person who loves to talk, but also I love to make sure to meet the people that can make a difference. And the difference that can benefit the whole, because the main thing I'm trying to do is as well is reach the workers, because they're the foundation of this country. And that's why yesterday I was with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers Union, because they're on strike right now in Elkhart. Because my job is to make them feel secure and safe. The Infrastructure Act is beautiful. It's big, it's monstrous, and I wish they wouldn't do that. I wish they'd be more specific on certain areas instead of tagging things on all the time. But there's a lot of great things that I would be honored to be part of to help make this happen.
Excellent. Okay, so we're just going to go around once more. I don't know if Tom's still there. Tom, you there? Okay, good. Okay, so we really did go over. So if you could just just a minute of a closing, and then I'll give everyone the big talk about the deadlines for voting and all of that. So you don't have to worry about that. I'll do all of that.
Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks everybody for doing this. I appreciate you being here. This is our year, like I said earlier. And as Democrats, it's incumbent upon us to protect Congressman Frank in the 1st. We don't have to worry about Congressman Andre in Indianapolis in the 7th. So we make sure we do well in the 1st district and get our votes out. We're working across the state. Obviously, all new voters are 70% likely to go our way. So I just want to say thanks to my fellow Democrats and my fellow Regionites. And I'm working real hard. It seems like we're catching fire at the exact right time. And, I think I see Paul a lot on the campaign trail. He's excellent. Obviously, I see Congressman Frank on the campaign trail. He's working hard. I really think that we're clicking as a party. My ticket, by the way, I'm running with 3 great candidates. Destiny Scott Wells running for Secretary of State. She is excellent, working real hard. And Destiny's from Martinsville, but she lives in Marion County. She just recently retired from the Army. We have Jessica McClellan, who's elected the Monroe County Treasurer. She's running for Indiana Treasurer, working her tail off all over the state of Indiana. I run into her often. And then we have a CPA that works for Cummings Incorporated. She's an auditor for Cummings. She's a CPA. She's the first lady of a big church in Marion County, Zene Brooks, who's working real hard. And it's the year of the woman. And I want to give credit to Chairman Mike Schmuel for putting together a ticket of all women and me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if I screwed up the ticket, but I'm working real hard. And I tell you, I feel like the older brother running in this campaign. We all work real well together. We make multiple appearances together. We see the congressional candidates that are working real hard. Obviously, Paul's doing a great job in the 2nd, and just real proud to be at the top of the ticket this year. It's something I take very seriously. That's why I'm working so hard. I feel like if I do my job the right way, it makes it easier for our congressmen to get elected, makes it easier for our state reps, our state senators, our trustees, our trustee advisory board members, everybody across the board. I realize it's a big responsibility that I hold, and I promise to work hard all the way through November 8th. So thank you, Deb. Thank you, Deb, for putting this together. I appreciate it very much. It's nice to see everybody. And I apologize that I have to run so quick, but I'm literally about 2 minutes late for an appointment downstairs.
Okay, can you just tell us how people can find you?
Yeah, sure. You can go McDermott, gomcdermott.com. It's easy to find.
GoMcDermott.com. Okay, great. All right.
And we
Okay,
have
thank you.
we have websites on there. You can request, yard signs you can request on there. And so thank you everybody for putting this together. Thank you, Deb, for moderating it. It's great to see my friends from LaPorte. Bye,
All
everybody.
right, thanks, Tom.
Yeah, Paul for all. Nice to see you.
Okay, Mark, just like a 1-minute wrap up, where can we find information about Congressman Mrvan? How can we help the campaign?
One, Deb, I'd just like to thank you for helping host Chairman and Dr. Vita Cora for his just staunch advocacy for the Democratic Party for a number of years. And for all those that are participating, our strength of our nation, our strength of our democracy requires participation. And you are exhibiting that today. And you understand what's at stake in this upcoming election. You go to MrvanForCongress.com. You go to the Frank Mrvan for Congress Facebook page, and would encourage everyone to do that. But in closing, simply want to suggest that Congressman Mrvan is doing his very best to ensure we create an economy that works for everybody and a society that has equity for all. And when you do that and you make that your priority, you create powerful enemies. And just please, by the time this election is over, you will hear any number of untruths, as the most polite way I can phrase it, as to what motivates Frank Mrvan. I promise you, as someone who is with him nearly every day and work closely with him, he wakes up simply trying to work as hard as the people that he represents does each and every day in their life. And he sincerely is doing his very best to advocate for our collective interest in Washington, D.C. And so in closing, simply, if you can get 2 people to vote for the guy, this election is ours. I simply tell people it's going to be close, and there's going to be a lot of funding that is going to try to paint him as someone he's not. It's incumbent upon us here on this Zoom to tell people he's a good man doing good work and that he represents us and he's delivering for the district. He's not going to parrot national party ideology. He is going to listen to your voice. He is going to listen to your concerns, and he's going to be our advocate in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Deb, and all those participating.
All right, take care, Mark. Great to see you. Okay, Paul, yes, if you could just wrap up for us, just,
Sure.
you know, how can people help you get elected?
Well, I've been working all 11 counties. And so I'm not sure if you know, it goes all the way down to Wabash and Logansport. And I've been trying to meet as many people as possible. And I give them a card and I say, hey, could you actually think of this as a ticket for you to go and find 10 more people to tell this to? And so then I tell them that they have to ask those 10 people to ask 10 more people. And so I'm a big grassroots person because I'm an educator. I know how to work with kids, and I know actually how to work with adults, but I'm not rich because I didn't go after banking or accounting or anything like that. And so I do need your help. And if you could assist in donating towards my campaign, that'd be great, because I'm working on possibly getting a Notre Dame football game commercial, which would reach out to a lot of people. And interesting enough, I told you I like to listen. There's a woman in Plymouth, a Republican, who said she cannot vote Democrat. And so she's actually going to have a fundraiser for this Democrat. Or she cannot vote. She cannot vote Republican, and she's going to vote Democrat. And she's going to actually have a fundraiser for me because I listen and I want to represent everyone and talk about local issues with local people.
Very good. Where can people find you, Paul?
Go to paulforall22.com. And so I'm Paul for All, as in I would like to represent everybody and not just some. And I'd like to do that in the year 22.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, thank you very much. You all were just terrific. So yeah, in closing, I just want to say voter registration ends on October 11th. If you need an absentee ballot, you can apply for that, but you must submit that application by October 27th. And then when you get your absentee ballot, you have to have it in the hands of the county clerk by November 7th. And of course, early voting starts October 12th. Here in LaPorte County, the locations will be the Michigan City Courthouse, the LaPorte Courthouse, Wanata on 30, and the 400 North and Cool Spring at the old Cool Spring library. That's the LaPorte County Library branch on 400 North and Johnson Road. That's what it is. I'm sorry, Johnson Road. It's called Cool Spring, but it's on Johnson Road and 400 North. So those are the 4 locations for early voting. Starts October 12th, Monday through Friday, 8 to 4. Then the last 2 Saturdays before November 8th, it will be 8 to 3. Only those 2 Saturdays. Otherwise, it will just be Monday through Friday. Go to indianavoters.com to register, check your registration, to find your polling place, to find your early voting sites. They're actually not on there yet, but they're going to be soon. And to request an absentee ballot if you need it, and to see who's on your ballot. Then please write down your plan. When will you vote? Where will you vote? How will you get there? Do you need an absentee ballot? And who will you vote for? Please write it all down. We just find that that is a very effective way to help people execute the voting process. So, and encourage people to write down their voting plan. I am very sorry that we did not get to questions in the chat. We just, you guys are good talkers and, you got a lot to say. And so I apologize for that, but I encourage you to reach out to these, the candidates. If you have questions that were not answered, please reach out to them directly. I know they want to answer your questions. I know they want to hear what you have to say. So please do that. And likewise, we have live on Facebook, and I don't know if we had questions, but if we did, we didn't get to them. So again, please reach out to the candidates, just directly and get your answers, the answers to all your questions. All right, thank you so much. And thank you, Dr. Cora. I don't see you on here. I know you're on here somewhere, but thank you for helping us with this. And thanks to Dahlia, who is our tech wizard on all of this. All right, good night.
Great job. Thank
Thank
you.
you.